सर, चेयरमैन सर।
प्रणाम।
प्रणाम प्रणाम सर।
नमस्ते मैडम जी।
पूजा जी, आप लोगों को भी मेरा नमस्कार।
नमस्ते टू ईच एंड एवरीबॉडी।
नमस्ते MS सर, नमस्ते सर, चेयरमैन।
नमस्ते
लक्ष्मीकांत जी को प्रणाम।
प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी जी को प्रणाम।
नमस्कार नमस्कार।
नमस्ते मैडम, नमस्ते।
नमस्कार।
चलिए शुरू कीजिएगा। तो
जी, कार्यक्रम को अगर सर अनुमति दें तो डायरेक्टर मैडम शुरू करें।
एकदम से
जी सर, प्रारंभ करते हैं हम कार्यक्रम को। मेरी आवाज आ रही है यहाँ कोई?
जी
आवाज आ रही है?
हाँ जी जी।
हम
सभी
लोग
को
अपनी आवाज बंद कर रहे हैं।
जी
आपकी आवाज आ रही है, हम लोग बंद कर रहे हैं।
सभी को सादर नमस्कार और स्वागत करते हैं भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद शैक्षणिक केंद्र के द्वारा आयोजित आज के इस विशेष व्याख्यान कार्यक्रम में, जो कि विशेष रूप से स्वामी विवेकानंद के एक उस विशेष उद्बोधन, उस विशेष भाषण के तारतम्य में आज उस विशेष अवसर पर यहाँ पर आयोजित किया जा रहा है। और इस कार्यक्रम में इस उद्बोधन, इस विषय पर हमारे साथ मुख्य वक्ता के रूप में उपस्थित हैं प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी मैडम, पूर्व अध्यक्ष दर्शन विभाग, विश्व भारती केंद्रीय विश्वविद्यालय पश्चिम बंगाल से हमारे साथ उपस्थित हैं। आपका अभिनंदन करते हैं, स्वागत करते हैं। आज के इस कार्यक्रम की अध्यक्षता कर रहे अध्यक्ष भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद प्रोफेसर RC सिन्हा सर, हम आपका हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत करते हैं, प्रणाम करते हैं। हम स्वागत करते हैं माननीय सदस्य सचिव प्रोफेसर सच्चिदानंद मिश्र सर, भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद सर, आपका भी हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत है। साथ ही साथ मैं स्वागत करते हूँ हमारे साथ इस आभासीय पटल पर जुड़े हुए बहुत सारे सभी बुद्धिगण, और जिनको कि मैं देख पा रही हूँ। कुछ प्रोफेसर संभाजित मिश्र सर साथ जुड़े हैं, मैडम सिंह हमारे साथ पटना से जुड़ी हैं, और भी कई सारे लोग हमारे साथ इस पर जुड़े हुए हैं। लक्ष्मीकांत पाही जी बंगाल से हमारे साथ इस कार्यक्रम में जुड़े हैं, और डॉक्टर जयशंकर सिंह समस्त भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद शैक्षणिक केंद्र की टीम। हम इस कार्यक्रम को प्रारंभ करते हैं। साथ ही साथ में मैं माननीय सदस्य सचिव प्रोफेसर सच्चिदानंद मिश्र सर से अनुरोध करूंगी कि विषय को भी हम साथ ही उद्बोधन के साथ इस कार्यक्रम को प्रारंभ। माननीय प्रोफेसर सच्चिदानंद मिश्र सर।
सदाशिव समारंभां शंकराचार्य मध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वंदे गुरु परंपरां। समादरणीय अध्यक्ष महोदय प्रोफेसर RC सिन्हा जी, आज की मुख्य वक्त्री प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी जी, इस आभासीय पटल पर के रूप में उपस्थित डॉक्टर सुधांशु शेखर जी, DN पांडे जी, दर्शन डॉक्टर विजय कुमार राय, डॉक्टर रेणु, डॉक्टर रेखा यादव, राजस्थान से हमारे साथ उपस्थित हैं प्रोफेसर अरविंद विक्रम सिंह जी, प्रोफेसर लक्ष्मीकांत त्रिपाठी जी, और भी डॉक्टर पूजा व्यास, प्रोफेसर विजय कुमार जैन जी, सभाजीत मिश्र सर, और अनेक अन्य विद्वज्जन जो कि डॉक्टर आनंद कुमार मिश्र, वर्षा चौरसिया इत्यादि अनेक विद्वज्जन इस आभासीय पटल पर उपस्थित हैं। बड़े अवसर पर यह कार्यक्रम आज का आयोजित किया जा रहा है, और इस कार्यक्रम की संकल्पना को विचार में लाने के लिए सबसे पहले मैं प्रोफेसर रमेश चंद्र सिन्हा जी को बधाई देना चाहता हूं, क्योंकि उन्होंने ऐसे मौके पर इस कार्यक्रम की रूपरेखा संकल्पित की और आयोजित किया। आज का दिन बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण है। इसको 9/11 के रूप में बहुत बार स्मरण किया जाता है, क्योंकि आज 11 सितंबर का दिन है। लेकिन ये 9/11 तीन तरह से बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण है, और एक घटना को लेकर के हम इसको स्मरण में रखते हैं, बाकी दो घटनाओं को भूल जाते हैं। एक घटना जिसको कि जो सबसे पहली घटना है 1893 में स्वामी विवेकानंद ने शिकागो में जो भाषण दिया था आज के दिन, वो बहुत ही युगांतरकारी घटना थी। और एक तरह से देखा जाए तो उस व्याख्यान में उन्होंने इसका संकेत दिया था कि किस प्रकार से अनेक धर्मावलंबियों ने अपने आग्रह के वशीभूत होकर के, अपने धर्मांधता के वशीभूत होकर के बहुत सारा खून खराबा आगे बढ़ाया है। और उसमें एक संकेत दिखाई पड़ता है कि भविष्य में किस प्रकार की समस्याएं शुरू हो सकती है। दूसरी जो घटना है वो अभी शायद बहुत बार भूल जाती है, हमको स्मरण में नहीं रहती है। वो 1906 में 11 सितंबर को महात्मा गांधी ने सत्याग्रह का प्रारंभ किया था। हालांकि सत्याग्रह नाम इसको बाद में दिया गया, उस समय नहीं दिया गया, परंतु 1906 में आज ही के दिन महात्मा गांधी ने सत्याग्रह का नाम दिया। और तीसरी एक घटना जो कि उससे करीब 95 वर्ष बाद होती है, जिसमें कि वर्ल्ड ट्रेड सेंटर को धराशायी कर दिया जाता है एक आतंकवादी ग्रुप के द्वारा 2 हवाई जहाजों को किडनैप करके उठा करके उड़ा करके। तो ये 3 घटनाएं हैं और बड़ी महत्वपूर्ण तीनों घटनाएं। और इन तीनों घटनाओं में एक सामंजस्य है, इनके साथ कोई न कोई संबंध है। उस संबंध को अगर हम देखें तो ऐसी स्थिति में हमारे सामने चीजें घटित होंगी, चीजें समझ में आएंगी। आज का जो यह व्याख्यान है आयोजित किया गया है वह इसलिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है क्योंकि इसमें 9/11 की जो सबसे पहली घटना है उस घटना का संदर्भ लेते हुए आज का यह व्याख्यान आयोजित किया जा रहा है। और उस व्याख्यान का परिप्रेक्ष्य निश्चित तौर पे परवर्ती काल में जो घटनाएं हुई हैं इस दिन पर, उसका भी विचार विमर्श में कहीं ना कहीं विचार आएगा। क्योंकि एक तरफ जहां पर स्वामी विवेकानंद समग्र विश्व को विश्व धर्म सम्मेलन के माध्यम से आगाह से करते हुए प्रतीत होते हैं कि जो धर्मांधता है वह धर्मांधता किस तरफ ले जा सकती है और उस धर्मांधता को किस प्रकार से काटा जा सकता है, उसकी काट क्या, उससे बचने का रास्ता क्या है। और उससे बचने का एक मार्ग स्वामी विवेकानंद दिखलाते हैं। और उसके कुछ समय बाद 1906 में महात्मा सत्याग्रह की शुरुआत आज के दिन करते हैं, तो वह भी एक इसी प्रकार की घटना की शुरुआत है कि हमारे सामने विरोध जो उपस्थित हैं उन विरोधों का किस प्रकार से शमन किया जाए। निश्चित तौर पे मुंडे मुंडे मतिर्भिन्ना इस प्रकार की जो संस्कृत सूक्ति है, उस सूक्ति के परिप्रेक्ष्य में हर एक व्यक्ति के मत भिन्न भिन्न हुआ करते हैं और उन मतों के प्रति लोगों का आग्रह भी हुआ करता है। ऐसा नहीं है कि हर एक विरोध जो वैचारिक विरोध हैं वो वैचारिक विरोध समाप्त हो जाएंगे। अगर हम ऐसा सोचते हैं तो ये बहुत गलत अवधारणा होगी। अगर कोई धर्म इस प्रकार से विचार करता है कि भविष्य केवल उसी के धर्म का होगा तो यह भी एक गलत विचारधारा है। क्योंकि रुचि नाम वैचित्र्याद ऋजुकुटिला नाना पथजुषम, तो रुचियों का जो वैचित्र है वह वैचित्र निश्चित तौर पे एक धर्मावलंबी समग्र विश्व को होने के लिए बाध्य नहीं कर सकता है। हमारी जो भिन्नताएं हैं, स्वाभाविक जो अभिरुचियां हैं, वो अभिरुचियां हमको अवसर प्रदान करती हैं कि हम चाहें तो नास्तिक बने, हम चाहें तो एक किसी अद्वैतवाद की तरफ बढ़ें, हम चाहें तो द्वैतवाद की तरफ बढ़ें। क्योंकि हो सकता है कि किसी को द्वैतवाद में ही एक आत्मसंतुष्टि प्राप्त हो रही है, किसी को अद्वैतवाद में आत्मसंतुष्टि प्राप्त हो रही है, किसी को एकेश्वरवाद में और किसी को बहुदेववाद में और किसी को हो सकता है निरीश्वरवाद में आत्मसंतुष्टि प्राप्त हो रही है। तो ऐसी स्थिति में एक ही धर्म समग्र विश्व को अनुशासित करे ये संभावना नहीं है। एक ही विचारधारा समग्र विश्व को अनुशासित करे ये संभव नहीं है। और अगर भिन्न भिन्न विचारधाराएं हैं हमारे सामने तो उसमें वह विचारधाराओं का जो संघर्ष है, वह संघर्ष अनेक बार कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स ऑफ सिविलाइजेशन के रूप में, सभ्यताओं के संघर्ष के रूप में भी उपस्थित हो सकता है, और या तो वह एक लोकतांत्रिक वाद विवाद संवाद के रूप में उपस्थित हो सकता है। और उसके लिए मार्गदर्शन करते हैं महात्मा गांधी कि हमको अगर विरोध करना है तो विरोध का तरीका क्या होना चाहिए। सत्याग्रह की जो अवधारणा उन्होंने प्रस्तुत की, वह आज से 115 साल पहले जितनी संगत थी, आज उससे कम संगत नहीं, निश्चित रूप से उससे ज्यादा संगत है। क्योंकि आज से 125 साल पहले या 115 वर्ष पहले विश्व जितना हिंसक था, आज उतना हिंसक नहीं रह गया है, भले ही हमको हिंसाएं अनेक क्षेत्रों में दिखाई पड़ रही। तो वह भी एक मार्ग है। और इसका परिप्रेक्ष्य जो दूसरा एक दिखाई पड़ रहा है, जो विध्वंसकारी विरोध का एक विध्वंसकारी हाहाकार समग्र विश्व में पड़ा हुआ है। तो इस परिप्रेक्ष्य में आज विवेकानंद के संदेश को समझने के लिए और इससे अच्छा मौजू अवसर नहीं हो सकता है, और इस कार्य के लिए, इस वक्तव्य के लिए आशा मुखर्जी जी जैसी विदुषी से अधिक योग्य भी कोई दूसरा उपलब्ध शायद नहीं हो सकता है। मैं आपका स्वागत करता हूं और अधिक न बोलते हुए इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ अपनी वाणी को विराम देता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आप उपस्थित हैं, और निश्चित रूप से हम सब इन विचारों को, इन परिप्रेक्ष्यों में इन विचारों को रखते हुए लाभान्वित होंगे, और एक विचारधाराओं का क्रम, विचारों का जो संघर्ष है, उस संघर्ष को एक लोकतांत्रिक आयाम देने का प्रयास करें। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद सर, बहुत बहुत। निश्चित रूप से सर ने हम सब लोगों के समक्ष आज के इस व्याख्यान की एक संकल्पना यहाँ रखी, साथ ही साथ माननीय अध्यक्ष महोदय को एक अच्छे मार्गदर्शन के लिए और आज के इस कार्यक्रम को आयोजित करने वाली बात के लिए भी हम सभी लोग आभार और धन्यवाद देते हैं। साथ ही साथ सर के विवेकानंद की जब भी बात होती है तो अमेरिका के इस शिकागो शहर की धर्म संसद में साल 1893 में दिए गए आज के अवसर पर जिस बात को हम ले रहे हैं, इस भाषण की, इस व्याख्यान की, इस उद्बोधन की चर्चा जरूर होती है। और ये चर्चा इसलिए भी जरूरी है क्योंकि यही वो मात्र एक उद्बोधन था जिससे कि स्वामी विवेकानंद ने संपूर्ण भारत की एक मजबूत छवि के साथ पूरी दुनिया के सामने भारत को पेश किया था। और निश्चित ही ऐसी बहुत सारी बातों को इस व्याख्यान में उन्होंने समायोजित किया था जिससे कि भारतीय संस्कृति और भारत का गौरव पूरी दुनिया के समक्ष दिखाई दिया। आज के इस विषय पर और अधिक विस्तार डालने के लिए हमारे साथ उपस्थित आज के इस कार्यक्रम की मुख्य वक्ता प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी मैडम को मैं आमंत्रित करती हूँ कि वे अपने व्याख्यान को हम सब लोगों के समक्ष रखें। आदरणीय प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी मैडम।
नमस्कार।
नमस्ते।
नमस्कार। सर्वप्रथम मैं हमारे रेस्पेक्टेड चेयरपर्सन ICPR के प्रोफेसर RC सिन्हा साहब को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ, और समस्त पार्टिसिपेंट्स जो आज इस सभा में उपस्थित हैं, और ICPR से विषय प्रवर्तन के लिए पूजा व्यास जी को, स्वागत उद्बोधन के लिए डॉक्टर सच्चिदानंद जी को जो सदस्य सचिव हैं ICPR के, और जयशंकर जी को जो वरिष्ठ सलाहकार हैं लखनऊ सेंटर के, इस आयोजन को सफल बनाने के लिए जो प्रयास किया है उसके लिए मैं सभी को धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ। सभी को नमस्कार। मैं जो कुछ कहने जा रही हूँ भाषा की दृष्टि से, हालांकि हिंदी बोल सकती हूँ ऐसी बात नहीं है, पर शायद बहुत सालों से अभ्यास नहीं रहा हिंदी बोलने का, इसलिए इंग्लिश में ही बोलने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ, और अगर कहीं ज़रूरत हो तो हिंदी बंगाली का भी मैं सहारा लूँगी। आशा है आप लोग सब क्षमा करेंगे मुझे। दवे साहब को बहुत दिनों बाद देख रही हूँ। नमस्कार दवे। ये एक अच्छी चीज़ है कि इससे सभी लोगों से एक बार मिलना हो जाता है। हालांकि आगे जब वर्चुअल नहीं था तो सबसे पर्सनली मिलना होता था, पर कम से कम इस समस्त बाधाओं के साथ होते हुए भी हम लोग जो मिल पा रहे हैं, ये सबसे बड़ी बात है। तो आज के लेक्चर को जो है मैं अपना वक्तव्य जो है मैं इंग्लिश में ही प्रस्तुत कर रही हूँ। आज टुडे इज द 128th anniversary commemoration of Chicago lecture delivered by Swami Vivekananda ji on this day at the Parliament of Religions. I feel honored to be invited by ICPR for this memorable occasion, but I humbly also submit that I am not perhaps the right person to do the justice, as in no way I can be considered a scholar of Vivekananda nor of Hinduism. But I take this opportunity as a challenge to stand before you to share whatever relevance I see of the Chicago lecture in contemporary context of India and the world, and would try to compare the thoughts of two great visionaries of India, Swami Vivekananda, who was born in 1863 and died in 1902, and Rabindranath Tagore, who was born in 1861 and died in 1941. Especially due to the fact of living for 4 decades in Shantiniketan Ashram that nurtures the vision of Rabindranath Tagore, and my engagement with the academic study of religion in India for last few decades. Incidentally, today is also the day, as Sachidanand ji already told, the deadliest Islamic terror attack on American soil that took place in 2001, killing 2,750 people, popularly known as 9/11. Now, let me first begin with Swami Vivekananda's lecture and its background. After collecting funds from his disciples in Madras and the kings of Mysore, Ramanand, Khetri, Divans on 31st July 1893, Vivekananda left Bombay, Chicago. The name Vivekananda was suggested by Ajit Singh of Khetri, meant the bliss of discerning wisdom. Vivekananda. He took a ship from Bombay via China, Japan, and Canada. While traveling from Japan to Canada, he accidentally met Jamshedji Tata, who was also going to Chicago to get new business ideas. They had discussions about future of science, research, and education in India. And later, Jamshedji Tata actually helped in establishing a lot of institutions in Calcutta. Vivekananda reached Vancouver on 25th July, traveling almost for 2 months, and traveled to Chicago by train and arrived there on Sunday, 30th July, 1893. But after reaching Chicago, Vivekananda learned that no one could attend the parliament as delegate. Although actually the notice of parliament was circulated almost by 3,000 postcards. And that is why Vivekananda came to know about this world of parliament. So he actually decided to take the journey. But then that will not open till first week of September. He did not have any credential at that moment and felt utterly disappointed. But Vivekananda was absolutely determined and did not give up his hope. To cut his expenditure, because he didn't have money and he had borrowed money, and living in Chicago for 1 month was so expensive, so he decided to go to Boston, which was less costly than Chicago. At Boston, Vivekananda met Professor John Henry Wright of Harvard University, who invited Vivekananda to give a lecture at the university. Professor Wright was very impressed by Vivekananda's knowledge, wisdom, and excellence, and insisted that he represents Hinduism at the Parliament of World Religions. This, in his opinion, would, to quote, would give an introduction to the nation. Now, notice the word. So actually, Viveka was meant to introduce the nation, which was India, which was in the formation. And while giving the credentials, and he was also asking for the credentials because Vivekananda did not have the credentials. So to give his credentials, he said, Professor Wright said, to quote, to give credentials to Vivekananda is like the sun to state its right to shine in the heavens. Now note that language. To give the credentials to Vivekananda is like the sun to state its right to shine in the heavens, unquote. Thus, with the credentials from Professor Wright, Vivekananda gets the entry to the Parliament of Religions and started on 11th September and continued up to 28th September. This Parliament of Religions was for 17 days. Vivekananda's 5 addresses during this time are called Response to Welcome. That was his first address. That was held on 11th September. Then second was Why We Disagree on 15th September. Paper on Hinduism. This was on 19th September. Religion, Not the Crying Need of India. That was on 20th September. And Buddhism, The Fulfillment of Hinduism. And then on 26th September, the final address on 17th September. The our background of the Chicago lecture is also very important, as it played a very important role in the global interest and researches on Hinduism and in religions at large, also in shaping India during and after independence. I would first discuss some important ideas expressed in these addresses, his form of Vedanta, and then compare it with Tagore's ideas and his form of Vedanta. That takes the form of religion of man and religion of humanity. Although the relationship between the two had not been subject to much scholarly studies, I would avoid discussion on the differences between Vivekananda and Tagore, as that has been often highlighted by the scholars. Swamiji started his speech on 11th September with salutation. Sisters and brothers of America. And then says, quote, I thank you in the name of the most ancient order of monks in the world. I thank you in the name of Mother of Religions. I thank you in the name of millions and millions of Hindu people in all classes and sects, unquote. While emphasizing on the tolerant culture of Hinduism, he says, I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all nations of the earth. I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the purest remnant of the Israelis who came to southern India and took refuge with us in every year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. I am proud to belong to the religion which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation. I will quote to you, brethren, a few lines from the hymn which I remember to have repeated from my earliest boyhood, which is every day repeated by millions of human beings. To quote from Bhagavad Gita, as the different streams having their sources in different places all mingle their water in the sea. So, O Lord, the different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear crooked or straight, all lead to thee. The natural question is, if all paths lead to one reality, one truth, one God, whatever name we call, why there are disagreements? The second address by Swamiji addresses this question, why we disagree. He tried to explain the reasons for differences by telling a story of a frog that stayed in his little well and all his life, and how he encounters another frog from the sea, and concluded, quote, that has been the difficulty all the while, unquote. I'm a Hindu. I'm sitting in my own little well and thinking that the whole world is my little well. The Christian sits in his well, his little well, and thinks the whole world is his well. The Mohammedan sits in his little well and thinks that that is the whole world. I have to thank you for America for the great attempt you are making to break down the barriers of this little world of ours, and hope that in the future the Lord will help you to accomplish your purpose. And the purpose is of uniting humanity. Giving the example of India and granting the importance of the three religions from prehistoric times, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, and Judaism, Vivekananda agrees that each tradition has had to face tremendous shocks, and that each of these religions had their conflicts, sects that shook the foundation for some time, but they also survived the earthquakes and floods. And these, to quote, these sects were all sucked in, absorbed, and assimilated into the immense body of the mother faith, unquote. Here, the mother faith is meant Hinduism, and Hinduism is used in the widest sense. He further argues, to quote, from the high spiritual flights of Vedanta philosophy, of which the latest discoveries of science seem like echoes to the low ideas of idolatry, with its multifarious mythology, the agnosticism of the Buddhist, and the atheism of the Jains, each and all have a place in Hindu's religion. So Hinduism not only includes all the sects and forms of Vedanta, but also includes Buddhism and Jainism. Naturally, the question arises, if this is true, why so many differences and contradictions exist in thought as well as in practice? Where is the common center? Now, answering and addressing this question, this becomes his subject of the third address on the 19th September, and attempts to answer in this address, but he basically shared his knowledge of the Vedanta philosophy, the concept of God, soul, and body in Hinduism, in contrast with Zoroastrianism and Judaism. I will briefly present this view on Hinduism in the address, which is the longest address at Parliament of Religions. To quote, the Hindus have received their religion through revelation, the Vedas. They hold that the Vedas are without beginning and without end. It may sound ludicrous to the audience how a book can be without beginning or end. But by the Vedas, no book are meant. They mean the accumulated treasury of spiritual laws discovered by different persons in different times, just as the law of gravitation existed before its discovery and would exist if not all human beings or all humanity forgot it. So it is with the laws that govern the spiritual world. The moral, ethical, and spiritual relations between soul and soul, between individual spirits and the spirits and Father of all spirits are there before their discovery and would remain even if we forget them, unquote. The discoverers of these laws are called rishis, and we honor them as perfect beings. I'm glad to tell this audience that some of the very greatest of them were women. Now, notice that he's also mentioning that women were also part of this Vedic tradition. Here it may be said that these laws are laws, maybe without end, but they must have had a beginning. The Vedas teach us that creation is without beginning or end. Therefore, there never was a time when there was no creation. So it is from the time immemorial. So the issue of I as a body and mind and spirit or self is also discussed by him. Here I stand, and if I shut my eyes and try to convince my existence, I, what is the idea before me? the idea of a body. And am I then nothing but a combination of material substances? The Veda declares, no. I am a spirit living in a body. I am not the body. The body will die, but I will not die. Here, am I in this body? It will fall, but I shall go on living, unquote. We cannot deny that bodies acquire certain tendencies from heredity, but those tendencies only mean the physical configuration. So actually, he's arguing that body is determined by the causal laws as science tests. This is in accord with science. For science wants to explain everything by habit, and habit it got through repetitions. So repetitions are necessary to explain the natural habits of newborn soul. And since they were not obtained in this present life, they must have come down from past life. So you can see that even the notion of rebirth is actually introduced in this lecture as a causal chain. So taking all these for granted, how is it that I do not remember anything of my past life? Explaining, Vivekananda says, consciousness is only the surface of a mental ocean, and within its depth are stored up all our experiences. Try and struggle, they would come up, and you would be conscious even of your past life. So unquote. Through rishis, we have discovered the secret by which the very depth of the ocean of memory can be stirred up. Try it, and you would get a complete reminiscence of your past life. Hindus believe that he is a spirit. Him the sword cannot, him the fire cannot burn, him the water cannot melt, him the air cannot dry. The Hindus believe that every soul is a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is located in the body, and that death means the change of this center from body to body. Nor is the soul bound by the conditions of matter. In its very essence, it is free, unbounded, holy, pure, and perfect. But somehow or other, it finds itself tied down to matter and thinks of itself as a matter. He also accepts the facticity of life. Why should the perfect and pure being be thus under the thraldom of matter? Is the next question. How can the perfect soul be deluded into the belief that it is imperfect? His answer is, I do not know. I do not know how the perfect being, the soul, came to think of itself as imperfect, as joined and conditioned by matter. But the fact is a fact for all that. It is a fact that everybody's consciousness, that one thinks of oneself as the body. The Hindu does not attempt to explain why one thinks one is the body. Well then, the human soul is eternal and immortal, perfect and infinite, and death means only a change of center from one body to another. The present is determined by our past actions and the future by present. The soul will go on evolving up or reverting back from birth to birth and death to death. This is the law of nature. Is there no hope to come out of this? Is there no escape from this? Answering this, he actually talks about the materialism of the West and says, knowing him alone, you shall be saved from death over again. So one can come out, but only by the true knowledge, knowing him. Children, now you can see this, his criticism of Christianity in a very polite language. He says, children of immortal bliss, what a sweet, what a hopeful name. Allow me to call you, brethren, by that sweet name. Here's some immortal bliss. Yes, the Hindu refuses to call you sinner, because in Christianity, the human beings who are actually the material body are called sinners. You are the children of God, the sharers of immortal bliss. Each human being is a share of immortal bliss. So how can you be sinner? Holy and perfect being. Yet divinities on earth, sinners. It is a sin to call a man so. So to call a human being a sinner itself is a sin. It is a standing level on human nature. Come up, O loins, and shake off the delusion that you are a sheep. Remember the symbols and the stories and parables of Christianity. Your souls, immortal, spirits free, blessed and eternal. Ye are not matter. Ye are not bodies. Matter is your servant. Now notice this sentence. Matter is your servant, not you, the servant of matter. He's against the materialism of the West. So the spirit is actually, and the matter is your servant and not the servant of matter. He says, by whose command the wind blows, the fire burns, the cloud rain, and that stalks upon the earth. And what is his nature? And then he answers, he is everywhere, the pure and the formless one, the almighty and the all-merciful. Thou art, to quote, thou art our father, thou art our mother, thou art our beloved friend, thou art the source of all strength, give us strength. Thou art he that beareth the burdens of the universe, help me bear the little burdens of this life, to unquote. His answer, thus sang the rishis of the Vedas. And how to worship him? That's the question. And in fact, like Tagore, he says, through love. To quote, he is to be worshipped as the one beloved, dearer than everything in this and the next life, to unquote. This is the doctrine of love declared in Vedas. And the doctrine of love, he draws from Vedas. And let us see how it is fully developed and taught by Krishna, whom the Hindus believe to have been God incarnate on earth. He taught that a man ought to live in this world like a lotus leaf, which grows in water, but is never moistened by water. So a man ought to live in the world, his heart to God, and his hands to work. His hands to work. Now notice the sentence. His heart to God and his hands to work. It is good to love God for hope of reward. It is good to love God for hope of reward in this or the next world. But it is better to love God for love's sake. And the prayer goes, Lord, I do not want wealth, nor children, nor learning. If it be thy will, I shall go from birth to birth. But grant me this, that I may love thee without the hope of reward. Love unselfishly for love's sake, to unquote. The Vedas teach that the soul is divine, only held in the bondage of matter. Perfection will be reached when this bond will burst. And the word they use for this is therefore mukti, freedom from the bonds of imperfection, freedom from death and misery. Now, I will not go into the details because of time, because most of you are familiar with Hindu doctrines, and actually but only I will emphasize on the differences, the way he interprets Hinduism in this particular lecture. I've seen the soul, I've seen the God, and that is the only condition of perfection. So, but the perfection actually is not, perfection is actually in becoming, in realizing, and not in believing. Now, that's very important for him. So, belief in perfection is not simply the perfection, but it is the becoming and the realizing, but in being and becoming. So, that's more important for Vivekananda. And what becomes of man when he attains perfection? He lives a life of bliss infinite. He enjoys infinite and perfect bliss, having obtained the only thing in which man ought to have pleasure, namely of God, and enjoys the bliss with God. And in Tagore also, this bliss is emphasized. It is through creativity. He calls it as surplus in man. The common religion of all the sects of India, but then perfection is absolute, and the absolute cannot be two or three. It cannot have inequalities. It cannot be an individual. And so when a soul becomes the perfect and absolute, it must become one with Brahman. And it would only be realized by Lord. It would only realize the Lord as the perfection, the reality of its own nature and existence, the existence absolute, knowledge absolute, and bliss absolute. Then he also discusses how the body actually helps us in reaching consciousness. And he says, I tell you, it is nothing of the kind. If it is happiness to enjoy the consciousness of this small body, so if you can enjoy the small body, it must be greater happiness to enjoy the consciousness of two bodies. The measure of, so which means that enjoyment with the other. So with two bodies, the measure of happiness increasing, and if you enjoy the happiness with two bodies, then of course the measure increases. Increasing with the consciousness of increasing number of bodies, and then from 2 to 3 and 3 to many. So then you enjoy the pleasure through many bodies, and the aim ultimate of happiness being reached when it would become a universal consciousness. So when everybody, one consciousness and one bliss, then it is the highest. Therefore, to gain this infinite universal individuality, this miserable little prison individuality in which we are brought up or we are born with, must go. Then alone can death cease when I'm alone with life. Then alone can misery cease when I'm one with happiness itself. Then alone can all errors cease when I'm one with knowledge itself. And this is the necessary scientific conclusion. Science has proved to me that physical individuality is a delusion, that really my body is one little continuously changing body in an unbroken ocean of matter. And Advaita, which is unity, is the necessary conclusion with my other counterpart, soul. Emphasizing on the role of images, symbols, and idols in the Christianity and Hinduism, and comparing the two traditions, Vivekananda says, superstition is a great enemy of man, but bigotry, which is differentiating on the basis of a group, is worst. Why does a Christian go to church? Why is the church cross holy? Why is the face turned towards the sky in prayer? Why are there so many images in the Catholic Church? Why are there so many images in the minds of Protestants when they pray? And then he goes on, I'm not going into the details, he says that we connect ourselves naturally with blue sky, the sea, and the idea of holiness with the image of church, a mosque, or a cross. The Hindus have associated the ideas of holiness, purity, truth, omniscience, and such other ideas with different images and forms. But with this difference, that while some people devote their whole lives to their idols of a church and never rise higher, because with them religion means an intellectual assent to certain doctrines and doing good for their fellows. The whole religion of Hindu is centered in realization. So he again is making a difference between Christianity and Hinduism. So man is to become divine by realizing the divine. It is not just a belief in the doctrines, but also realizing it. Idols or temples or churches or books are only the supports, the helps of his personal of his spiritual childhood. But on and on he must progress. So मूर्ति पूजा हम लोग जो करते हैं उसका इतना क्रिटिसिज्म जो क्रिश्चियन में हुआ है उसके संदर्भ में कह रहा है कि मूर्तियां जो है वो हमको हेल्प करती हैं अंडरस्टैंड करने में स्पिरिचुअली जो हम हमारे अंदर जो कमियां हैं उनको ओवरकम करने में, तो वहां से हम शुरू करके हम ऊपर और ऊपर जा सकते हैं. हायर एंड हायर वी कैन गो, and the whole thing lies into the progress. To the Hindu, man is not traveling from error to truth, but from truth to truth, from lower to higher truth. Again, every religion is only evolving a god out of material man, and the same God is the inspirer of all of them. Why then are there so many contradictions? They are only apparent, says the Hindu. The contradictions come from the same truth, adopting itself to the very circumstances of different natures. He further emphasizes on the unity of goal, of whole humanity, and says, the Lord has declared, to quote, the Lord has declared to the Hindu in his incarnation as Krishna, quote, I am in every religion as the thread through a string of pearls. Wherever thou seest extraordinary holiness and extraordinary power, raising and purifying humanity, know thou that I am here, unquote. And what has been the result? And then he throws the challenge to the West, addressing to the audience. I challenge the world to find throughout the whole system of Sanskrit philosophy and any such expression as that Hindu alone will be saved and not others. I mean, as many religions, many traditions, it is claimed that if you follow my religion, then only you will be saved. Otherwise, you will not be saved. But then he's throwing this challenge to the audience and saying that you show me a single text or some single expression where Hindu alone will be saved and not others. And then he quotes Vyasa. We find perfect man even beyond the pale of our caste and creed. One thing more. Now, then, can the Hindu whose whole fabric of thought centers in God believe in Buddhism, which is agnostic, or in Jainism, which is atheistic? This question is addressed in the next address, entitled Buddhism, the Fulfillment of Hinduism. But Vivekananda concludes his address on Hinduism by saying, to quote, may he who is the Brahman of the Hindus, the Hura, Mazda of Zoroastrianism, the Buddha of Buddhists, the Zoha of Jews, and Father in heaven of Christians, give strength to you to carry out your noble idea. The star aroused in the east, traveled steadily towards the west, sometimes dimmed and sometimes effulgent, till it made a circuit of the world. And now it is again rising on the very horizon of the east, the borders of Senpo, the thousandfold more engulfed than it ever was before. So he is emphasizing on the universal character of Hinduism. In his next address on Buddhism, Vivekananda talks about the origin of Buddhism, relation between Buddhism and Brahmanism, and Buddhism and Vedas. I will just emphasize on the basic points about Buddhism. The great glory of Master is Buddha, lay in his wonderful sympathy for everybody, especially for the ignorant and the poor. He used the language of the people and not Sanskrit. Buddha said, I am for the poor, for the people. Let me speak in the tongue of the people, unquote. And so, to this day, the great bulk of his teaching are in vernacular of that day in India. Although he took away from the nation the eternal God, as you know, the Buddhism does not accept the existence of God, to which every one, man or woman, clings so fondly, but the faith in God remained. So Buddha tried to take away the God, but faith in God remained in India, in Hinduism. But Buddhism brought, the best part of Buddhism is that Buddhism brought wonderful to the masses. see the language. Buddhism brought wonderful heaven to the masses, and that has greatly rendered in society. So Buddha actually brought Hinduism to the masses. He concluded, and I quote, Hinduism cannot live without Buddhism, nor Buddhism without Hinduism, unquote, and showed how Buddhism is the fulfillment of Hinduism. In his last address, which is the final session, thanked for the dreaming, the love of truth, and then realized it, for liberal sentiments that overflew at the platform of the enlightened audience, for their uniform kindness and for the appreciation. A lot has been said for common ground of religious unity, but such unity cannot come by destruction of others or by religious conversions. And then he wants to quote, brother, yours is an impossible hope, unquote. Do I wish that the Christian would become Hindu? God forbid. Do I wish that Hindu or Buddha would become Christian? God forbid. Brother, yours is an impossible hope, unquote. Do I wish that the Christian would become Hindu? God forbid. And then said, but each must assimilate the spirit of others and yet preserve his individuality and grow according to his own law of growth. Holiness, purity, and charity are not the exclusive possessions of any church in the world. It is common in all the religions of the world. He concluded with a strong hope that upon the banner of every religion, will soon be written, in spite of resistance, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace and not dissension. Unfortunately, the strong hope that Swami Vivekananda concluded with remains a hope till now. And the nations of the world still live with such great hope. Now, let me discuss briefly. Professor Sinha, how much time can I take? Another 10 minutes?
Ji, madam.
You can continue.
Okay. Thank you. Let me discuss briefly Rabindranath Tagore's views, who was close contemporary of Vivekananda. Both lived in Bengal and were modern Bengalis, but unfortunately, Vivekananda left this world too early. When Vivekananda, then known as Narendranath Datta, was young, he was very fond of Rabindra Sangeet, songs written by Rabindranath Tagore, and jointly edited a book called Sangeet Kalpataru, published in 1887. Swami Vivekananda as Narendranath Datta, that includes 12 Rabindra Sangeets. Tagore met Vivekananda several times and himself taught Narendra notations of 2 of his songs. But later, when Vivekananda became a world-famous religious speaker, on 28th January 1899, they both were invited in an evening tea party by a British lady. They completely ignored each other. There may be deep reasons then, and scholars may go into these reasons. But Tagore, after Vivekananda's death, gave Vivekananda a big certificate and says, if you want to know India, study Vivekananda. I repeat, if you want to know India, study Vivekananda. In him, there's everything positive and nothing negative. This actually he has written into a letter to Roman and which is also written to Swami Ashokananda. Now let me share what Tagore wrote about Vivekananda in Bengali. In fact, I have the script in Bengali, but and I hope that some of you can, because after all, basically these are Sanskrit words, so you will be able to follow this. But I also have an English translation, but I think you will enjoy the Bengali, script, which is written by Tagore. So I'll just read out his Bengali script. Kichudin age, I'll read slowly so that you can follow. Kichudin age Vivekananda bolechilen, প্রত্যেক মানুষের মধ্যে ব্রহ্মের শক্তি। বলেছিলেন দারিদ্র্যের মধ্যে দিয়ে নারায়ণ আমাদের সেবা পেতে চান। একে বলে বাণী। এই বাণী স্বার্থবোধের সীমার বাইরে মানুষের আত্মবোধকে অসীম মুক্তির পথ দেখালে। এ তো কোনো বিশেষ আচারের উপদেশ নয়, ব্যবহার্য সংকীর্ণ অনুশাসনও নয়, ছুত মার্গে, ছুয়াছুত, ছুত মার্গের বিরুদ্ধতায়ের মধ্যে, going against the untouchability মধ্যে আপনি এসে পড়েছে। তার দ্বারা রাষ্ট্রিক স্বাতন্ত্র্যের সুযোগ হতে পারে বলে নয়, তার দ্বারা মানুষের অপমান দূর হবে বলে। So if you're against the untouchability, it's not for the independence of the country, but it is for the getting the dignity of the human being. তার দ্বারা মানুষের অপমান দূর হবে বলে। সেই অপমান আমাদের প্রত্যেকের আত্ম অবমাননা। If we are insulting a human being, then we are insulting ourselves. বিবেকানন্দের এই বাণী সম্পূর্ণ মানুষের উদ্বোধনের বলেই কর্মের মধ্যে দিয়ে, থ্রু অ্যাকশন, ত্যাগের মধ্যে দিয়ে মুক্তির বিচিত্র পথে আমাদের যুবকদের প্রবৃত্ত করেছে। So Vivekananda actually has shown us the path by which we can, through our action and through our devotion and also renunciation, we can get the mukti, and our young mind are actually are shown the path to join this. I can read the translation just quickly. Some times ago, Vivekananda said that there was the power of Brahman in every man, that Narayan wanted to have our service through the poor. This is what I call real gospel. This gospel showed of infinite from man's tiny, egocentric self beyond the limits of all selfishness. This was no sermon relating to the practical ritual, nor was it narrow injunction to be imposed upon one's eternal life. This naturally contained in it protest against untouchability, not because the world make for political freedom, but not because that would make the political freedom, but because that would do away with the humiliation of man, a curse which in fact puts to shame the self of us all. Vivekananda's gospel marked the awakening of man in his fullness, and that is why it inspired our youth to the diverse course of liberation through work and sacrifice. Now I will very briefly discuss the similarities between Vivekananda and especially related to this Chicago lecture and Rabindranath Tagore. I find a basic common ground in the thought and action of both the visionaries as Hindu and Vedantis. Help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace and not dissension. They both devoted their lives to sincerely work towards these goals in their thought and action that continues even today. I will present some of the similar thoughts of Tagore on religion. He starts his book Sadhana with the history of Greece, and in chapter 3, the article Problem of Evil begins with the discussion on evil, taking an argument almost similar to Augustine's argument on the same. It presupposes that perfection is the defining attribute of God. But instead of siding with either of Christian view or the Hindu view, that is of law of karma, he asserts as a true Vedantin that creation is imperfect and it is futile to ask why are we. Remember, Vivekananda also talked about this question. Thereby turns the focus on the facticity of human existence. We have talked about facticity in Vivekananda. Later, he again asserts that life, to quote, life process must go on, and we have faith which no individual instances to the contrary can shake. The direction of humanity is from evil to good, that good is the positive element of human nature, and that man values most is his ideal of goodness, to unquote. Like Vivekananda, Tagore also interprets Indian history as history of assimilation, peace, and harmony. Tagore, while writing Bharatvarsher Itihash, History of India, delineates two major tendencies of human civilization, European and Indian. The nature of European one is isolation of man from the nature and the universe at large, generating greed and consequent aggression. But in spite of violence, the basic tendency in India is that of harmony, ignoring the difference. Tagore then argues that the European tendency cannot be the path of human progress, as it would lead to destruction of human race. So Indian path, that of harmony, is the only way out. About the same time, which is just after 2 years or so, Tagore was also writing on community of life of rural Bengal in India. In this, he used his concept harmony again and again. In this article, also this difference between two historical tendencies, that of human and European, is brought in to indicate the path of reconstruction of rural Bengal on the one hand and creation of future India on the other. In this article, he categorically mentions two concepts, and these are, I think, very important concepts: Atma Shakti and Atmiya Sambandh. Atma Shakti and Atmiya Sambandh. Atma Shakti means power of the soul as opposed to self. The difference is clarified later in Sadhana, in his book Sadhana. The self may have the tendency to possess and, by so doing, alienates itself from the rest of the world. So this is Atma Shakti. On the one hand, reason, which is the soul of man, is the harmony with the working of the world. Atmiyata Sambandh for Tagore is a relation characterized by heart, touching heart. It's a relation characterized by heart touching heart. Hence, it is a relation between two souls. And this is the relation, actually, Vivekananda was also talking, that a body and two bodies, the bliss, the pleasure. So this is the relation. So the pleasure actually comes from the two souls, which are actually present in the body. So the heart touching heart, hence the relation between two souls. There's no problem when we meet another man through Atmiya Sambandha. But if the meeting through the alienated self, then it becomes possessive, aggressive, and the relation ends in violence. This theme is taken up in another essay, which is called Bharatvarsher Itihash Dhara. Bharatvarsher Itihash Dhara, Current of History in India, in 1912. In the social context, it appears in his nationalism lectures published in 1917. In personality, he notes, because of the mind instruments which we possess, we also have found our place as creators. We create not only art and social organization, but our inner nature and other outer surroundings, the truth of which depends upon this harmony with the law of universal mind. So the law of nature, the law of universal mind, which Tagore is talking, Vivekananda also is talking. Again, in the introduction of creative unity, he writes, which is also included in his book, Religion of Man, to give perfect expression to the one, the infinite, through the harmony of the many, to the one, the love, through the sacrifice of self, is the object alike our individual life and our society. This is exactly what Vivekananda has talked about. Yet again, in Poet's Religion, also included in Religion of Man, we realize that creation is the perpetual harmony between the infinite ideals of perfection and the eternal continuity of its realization, that so long as there is no absolute separation between the positive ideal and the material obstacles to its attainment, we need not be afraid of suffering and loss. This is the Poet's Religion. In his article, The Nation, he says, to quote, The cult of the nation is of a professionalism of the people. Now notice the language. The cult of the nation is the professionalism of the people, and then repeats his contention expressed in nationalism. With the growth of nationalism, man has become the greatest menace to man. So the nationalism, actually, the meaning of nationalism for Tagore is very different than the kind of nationalism which is talked in the West. Not the ground of nationalism. Man has become the greatest menace to man. Therefore, the continual presence of panic goads that every nationalism into ever-increasing menace. The more nations we build, the more menace we are creating. But he also admits that nationalism, which stands for the expressions of the collective self-interest. Now, that's also a different meaning of nationalism, which stands for the collective self-interest of the people, need not be ashamed of itself if it maintains its true limitations. So nationalism, if it is within, which is actually a collective self-interest of the people, then one should not be ashamed of itself. And this we maintain with
आवाज नहीं आ रही है मैडम जी?
आवाज नहीं आ रही है?
जी 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 जी
उनको बोल सकते हैं?
नहीं, जबकि अभी लेफ्ट भी नहीं है, ज्वाइन है, लेकिन पर आवाज नहीं आ रही है। और वो हमें लगता है नेटवर्क की वजह से या लाइट कटी हो, इस वजह से कुछ प्रॉब्लम है।
तो फोन करके बोलिए।
जी 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 मैडम जी, आवाज नहीं आ रही है आपकी?
तो पढ़े जा रही हैं। तो पढ़ रही हैं लेकिन आवाज नहीं।
हाँ, ज्वाइन हो रही है, फिर लेफ्ट हो गई हैं। और हमें लगता है कि लाइट कटी होगी। क्या संजय जी, क्या कर? हाँ, नहीं मैडम,
लेफ्ट हो गई।
हाँ, फिर आ जाएंगे भी। हमें लगता है कुछ नेटवर्क की इशू है।
प्रॉब्लम हो जाता है बीच में।
हाँ, नेटवर्क की इशू है।
फोन करके बोल दीजिए।
लगता है।
हेलो
जी अब आ रही है आवाज मैडम जी? जी
आवाज आ रही है। हाँ, मैं एक्चुअली मोबाइल से कर रही हूँ, मुझे कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो रही है कनेक्टिविटी में। So I was talking about creativity and nationalism. I just finished on nationalism. In his introduction to creativity, to give perfect expression to the one, the infinite through the harmony of the many, to the one, the love through the sacrifices of self in the object alike of our individual life and our society. So as I was saying, that Vishwanathi Shantiniketan has, the school and the ashram, which Tagore envisages, we have two parts. One is the extension work in the villages, and so the connecting self with the other is extremely important notion, and so is in Vivekananda. I mean, as we all know, in his practical Vedanta. I'll come to that later. So we realize that creation is the perpetual harmony between the infinite ideal of perfection and the eternal continuity of its realization. That so long as there is no absolute separation between the positive ideal and the material obstacle to its attainment, we need not be afraid of suffering and loss. This is the point of religion. Okay, let me skip some parts. In personality, he notes, teaching of religion can never be imparted. Now, as you can see that, the religion becomes very important for him, and the religion does not mean to
religion of the book, but religion means that the religion of man, which is the human values and the humanity, and then the progress of towards the unity. So I mean, this whole of ashram or Shantiniketan, the education program is actually complete human being. It is not so the study of religion becomes very important in the education system, and in fact in Shantiniketan we write about 16 languages, including Chinese, Japanese, and Arabic, Farsi, and many other languages, Indian as well as foreign languages, where people came from all over the world and they actually taught the languages. So it was like knowing the other tradition through their own texts and through their own languages. So language becomes a very important vehicle. So for him, the religion has to be, religion means not only text, knowing is practice. It's very important. Religion can be in the form of essence. It is there when there is in living. So actually is a pull from different traditions. They were coming and living the tradition. Therefore, the seekers as school of spiritual, even in this age. So although it was traditionally we had this Vedic tradition ashrams, this age we need ashrams like Shantiniketan. Religion is not a fractional thing that can be doled out in fixed weekly or daily manners as one among various subjects in the school syllabus. It is the truth of our complete being, the consciousness of our personal relation, infinite, center of gravity of our life. All this tried guys in Shantiniketan that took the university later. And religion means harmony, force. But he did not to happen. He wanted a harmony. So he came up with the repetition humanity of God or divinity of man. Some of you must be familiar, I guess. Whereby man realizes himself in the perspective of the infinite. Man evolves from lower form of life to the highest expression of it, from merely physical to personal man, and finally draws upon the surplus within him. Relationship is transformed in the various levels of this evolution. In each stage of his life, he is constructed by a complex interrelationship which gradually raise the coordination and harmony of human life. Tagore calls this interrelationship as creative principle of unity. The harmony he was talking about gets its foundation in surplus, that is the ontology of creativity in man. Therefore, the fundamental message of Vivekananda's practical Vedanta and Tagore's religion of man, and also the interpretation of Vedic tradition and Hinduism remains the same, to help each other and to evolve towards harmony and peace. And this is the path of mukti. Tagore says, Amar aloy এই আকাশে আলোয়, আমার মুক্তি এই আকাশে, সব জনের মনের মাঝে দুঃখ ব্যাপক তুচ্ছ কারণ কঠিন কাজে বিশ্বধাতের যজ্ঞশালা আত্মনারের বহ্নি জ্বালা. So to light the lamp of the self and the soul, that is the only way by which we get the mukti. Now let me conclude with a famous poem by Tagore from Gitanjali. Go not to the temple, hours upon the feet of God. Fill your own house with fragrance of love. Go not to light candles, altar of God. First remove sense of sin from your heart. Go to the temple to bow down to prayer. First, learn to humility before yourself. Go not to the temple to pray on bended knees. First, bend down to lift someone who is downtrodden. Go not to the temple to ask forgiveness for your sins. First forgive them from your heart, those who have sinned against you. Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity and for listening so patiently. Thank you so much.
जी थैंक यू मैडम जी।
हाँ जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच।
जी 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 आपने बहुत अच्छा व्याख्यान दिया सभी पक्षों को लेकर के। नहीं नहीं ठीक है, बढ़िया बढ़िया था मैडम, बहुत बढ़िया था। और इस कार्यक्रम में मैं अध्यक्षीय उद्बोधन और एवं सर को आज हम लोग वक्ता के रूप में सुनेंगे। प्रोफेसर RC सिन्हा सर को, अध्यक्ष भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद सर को मैं आमंत्रित करता हूं। आज हम लोगों को वक्ता और अध्यक्षीय उद्बोधन दोनों के रूप में हम लोगों के समक्ष जो है अपनी बात को रखेंगे। प्रोफेसर RC सिन्हा सर
जी। नमस्ते, नमस्ते टू ईच एंड एवरीवन। इस उद्बोधन में भाषा का कोई बंधन नहीं है। यू आर लिबरेटेड फ्रॉम द लैंग्वेज। और हम तो बहुत दिनों से इस बात को मानता रहा हूँ कि भाषा विचारों की अनुगामिनी है। लैंग्वेज इज द हैंडमेड ऑफ योर थॉट। तो मैं आशा मुखर्जी को, प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी के प्रति बहुत बहुत आभार प्रकट करना चाहूँगा कि आज इस 11 सितंबर के शुभ अवसर पर, इसको शुभ अवसर के रूप में मानते हैं हम, आपने बहुत ही बृहद और अच्छे व्याख्यान को देकर, चूँकि बहुत सारी जगहों में रामकृष्ण आश्रम में हम लोग स्वामी जी को आमंत्रित कर सकते हैं, लेकिन ICPR का जो मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव है वो है को ध्यान में रखकर हमने कहा कि कोई फिलोसफर ही जस्टिस कर सकता है। एंड यू हैव डन इट। फिलोसॉफिकल मेथड्स में क्रिटिकल एक्सपोजिशन, क्रिटिकल अप्रोच के और क्रिटिकल अप्रोच के अंतर्गत कंपैरेटिव अकाउंट कम्स अंडर द क्रिटिकल अप्रोच। और आपने जो दर्शन शास्त्र की मेथोडोलॉजी है उसको ध्यान में रखकर विवेकानंद के वो पार्लियामेंट के लेक्चर्स को वो डेट वाइज 11 सितंबर और उसको 9/11 के नाम से प्रसिद्ध हो गया, क्योंकि 9/11 जैसा कि हमारे मेंबर सेक्रेटरी ने कहा कि 3 पक्ष के लिए 9/11 जाना जाता है। एक तो विवेकानंद का वो पार्लियामेंट ऑफ वर्ल्ड रिलीजन्स में अभिभाषण, उद्बोधन, और निश्चित ही महात्मा गांधी के सत्याग्रह के लिए और वर्ल्ड सेंटर पर जो आक्रमण हुआ। तो इन 3 घटनाओं को अगर हम रिकंसाइल करें और philosophers are supposed to give a creative explanation, और क्रिएटिविटी के लिए आवश्यक है कनेक्टिंग, रिलेटिंग one incident and one concept to the other. So creativity lies in relating one concept to the other. यहाँ हम एक तरफ जो सबसे लेटेस्ट वर्ल्ड सेंटर पर अटैक, उसको भी हम इग्नोर नहीं कर सकते. While talking about the address of the Parliament of World Religions, कभी वक्त था, लेकिन जब घटनाएं दुर्घटनाएं होती हैं तो उसके आलोक में व्याख्या करना एक दार्शनिक ही कर सकता है, और दार्शनिक का एक कार्य भी है. तो certainly if 9/11 attack on Trade Center stands for a negative aspect, or we can say a terrorist attack, because world has said like that. तो दूसरी तरफ how the Hinduism, which is certainly a tolerant one, can be helpful to establish peace, harmony in the world. And Professor Asa Mukherjee has well thought out and worked meticulously, because I heard patiently, he has profusely quoted the original sentences of Vivekananda. तो विवेकानंद ने जो एड्रेस में कहा उसको आपने बहुत सुंदर ढंग से रखा, कोट किया, और इसके लिए हम आभार व्यक्त करते हैं. आवासीय पटल पर बहुत सारे लोग हैं, प्रोफेसर दवे जी हैं. मेरा काम, जयशंकर जी ने कहा कि हम अध्यक्षीय भाषण में जो हमको बोलना होता है हम तो बोलते रहते हैं, लेकिन आई एम नॉट एक्सपर्ट, और सभी का सुनते भी हैं, और जितना समय रहता है उतना मैं बोलता हूँ, ज़्यादा नहीं बोलता. तो मैं एक ही पॉइंट पर बोलना चाहूँगा. वो देखिए, ये दो चीज़ें आज आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव के अवसर पर प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी ने राष्ट्रीयता की बात की, nationalism. So the focal point is on Hinduism, Buddhism and nationalism. ये तीन philosophically relevant जो अवधारणाएं हैं, राष्ट्रीयता की अवधारणा पर बहुत ही अच्छे ढंग से कंपैरेटिव वे में आपने रखा. चूँकि आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव के अवसर पर भी आपका ये लेक्चर बहुत ही मान्य होगा, क्योंकि आपने राष्ट्रीयता की परिभाषा रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर के दर्शन के आलोक में बताया कि कैसे if the collective self, by nationalism if we understand collective self, then it is acceptable. But nationalism, as I know that Tagore was not confined to nationalism, he was having some international approach, and Tolstoy, Tagore, and even the Amartya Sen, the latest and the living giant. So he also could not confine themselves to nationalism. Why? Because they thought, Rabindranath Tagore did not think in that term as Amartya Sen thinks, that nationalism has got its negative function. In his book Identity and Violence, he has talked about that nationalism causes violence. And Tolstoy also, in his War and Peace, talks about that nationalism is one of the great, rather, cause of war. But this position is, I think Professor Asa Mukherjee has very well defended that Tagore has got different approach. By nationalism, if we understand collective self or the uh, um, nationalism is not love for the territory, but nationalism can transcend the territorial commitment, and if it is a matter of culture, if it is uh, uh, if it is not, nationalism should not be taken in a narrow sense, then nationalism is a pious thing. And what since we are celebrating Amrit Mahotsav, so that's why I am emphasizing the concept of nationalism, as she very briefly mentioned, and Vivekananda is perfectly a nationalist. He believes in the Hinduism, and naturally, but he believes in the plurality of religions, but he maintains the dignity of the man and the nation. Vivekananda maintains the dignity of man and the nation, and Vivekananda is against the prevalent conception of conversion. Why one should be converted into Christianity? Why not one should remain true to his own religion and serve the humanity? There is no need to be converted or to adopt the different sects of different religions. One can be a true Hindu and serve the humanity. One can be a true Christian and serve the humanity. So, and moreover, as pointed out by Asa Mukherjee, Professor Asa Mukherjee, that Buddhism and Jainism and Sikhism, they have got deep, rather, they are deeply rooted in Vedas or in Sanatan Dharma. The diversions or the maybe a little bit, but they are meaningful and they are offshoot of our Vedic religion, because in India, Jainism, Buddhism, they cropped up in the land of Vedas. So they're rather not opposed to. They may reject A doctrine or B doctrine, but the whole doctrine of Vedas, they interpretations may differ, but they are deeply associated with our ancient culture. So this, and Vivekananda also pointed out that Buddhism is not at all different from Hinduism. So these are the significant contributions of today's lecture, and I think though question and answer sessions have not been invited, keeping the constant of the time, and here as a true student of philosophy, she has pointed out that I is not the body. I is the spirit, according to Vivekananda. When I say I, what is this I? So I is perishable. If we identify I, that is a perishable. So certainly the man cannot be identified with I, as contemplated by Vivekananda. So man is the spirit. So we find that out and out Vivekananda is a Vedantin. Though he contrived, rather he stipulated neo-Vedantism. Why we talk about neo-Vedantism? Vedanta of Shankaracharya is a very dominant philosophy of India, and it is a most logical, systematic. Vedantism is a very systematic doctrine or school of thought. But I use the big but. He has used the most illogical concept of Maya to become very logical. Whereas Vivekananda does not subscribe to that Maya, concept of Maya. Vivekananda believes in this world. Shankaracharya loved transcendentalism. Shankaracharya, the Vedanta of Shankaracharya can be lapsed into transcendentalism. But the Vedanta of Vivekananda is a very living one. And that's why we call it Neo-Vedantin, what I understand. Because even when we talk about the concept of the moksha, so Shankaracharya emphasized on Videha Mukti and negated the empirical existence. But this is not the case with Swami Vivekananda. He emphasized on the service of man. So God lives where that is the line of sadhana. Long back I read it. God lives where the tiller is tilling the land. So God lives with the downtrodden. God lives where tiller is tilling the land and a stone breaker is breaking the stone. So this is the concept of Tagore in Sadhana he has written, and very nearly to this concept Vivekananda also stands, that service to God is service to man. So fortunately Asha Mukherjee knows much about Tagore, and she says that I'm trying. I am not expert in the philosophy of Vivekananda, but the comparison she has done is a marvelous one. And on this point, when she compares that Tagore and Vivekananda, both they believe in that service to man is very important, or living Vedanta. Vedanta, I said that transcendentalism is the one thing, but Vivekananda and Tagore, they do not go to the transcendental. Tagore is also Vedantin in one sense, theistic Vedanta. He propounds. He's not, and Vivekananda too, but they emphasize upon the living Vedanta and the new Vedanta. And with the passage of the time, certainly the old Vedanta requires to be modified, and our saints and seers like Vivekananda and Tagore, they have modified. So naturally, in the end, I would like to submit that plurality is there. We live in plurality. In this postmodern age, we cannot do away with plurality of religions. So there are different religions, and there is a need to establish perfection. If you want perfection, you must create harmony in the world. And certainly, if we respect others, if we respect other religions, then only we can live in harmony. And the national unity for which we are longing, and Vivekananda also longed for the national unity. So national unity is possible when we prove to be a true Hindu and let others to be sincere to their religions. So respect to all, that is the message of 9/11. Thank you very much, Jayashankarji. And hand over to very many persons are on the screen. I extend my namaskar to each and everyone.
जी सर, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर.
I would like to say something.
पूछना चाहता. जी जी.
हाँ,
Madam,
along with Vivekananda, who delivered lecture on 11 September, we should also remember that Gandhi was Satyagraha or started on 11 September, and Vinoba was born on 11 September. Today is 126th anniversary of Vinoba Bhave. So along with that, I mean, Satyagraha also started on that day, and at the same time 9/11 is well known for the violence in the world, the Twin Towers of America. So that is what I wanted to add.
We remember Gandhi ji.
Okay.
सर एक बात मैं भी बोलना चाहूंगी.
जी जी, पूर्ति जी बोलिए.
जी आज मैं क्लास में हूँ, एक्चुअली जैन कॉलेज के अपने फिलॉसफी की क्लास में हूँ.
क्रम जो है
पूर्ति जी, एक मैं पूर्ति जी अध्यक्ष जी को बोल रहे हैं.
और सर मेरे साथ मेरे क्लास के कम से कम 56 बच्चों ने भी आपका लेक्चर सुना है. मैं दिखाना चाहूंगी आपको. सब बच्चे आपका लेक्चर सुन रहे थे. ये एक्चुअली जैन कॉलेज का क्लास है. हम लोग सारे बच्चों ने आपका लेक्चर सुना है.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैडम जी, आपने बच्चों को भी आज के इस कार्यक्रम को सुनाया. और
जी सर, आज हम लोग क्लास में थे. मैंने कहा कि सब बच्चों को आपका वो सुनवाते हैं आज.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपको.
ये हम लोग का जैन कॉलेज का क्लास. जी नमस्कार सर.
जी 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 मैम.
जैन कॉलेज का मैं स्टूडेंट भी रह चुका हूँ, इसलिए बहुत धन्यवाद.
जी सर, इसीलिए मैं दिखाना चाहती हूँ सर. पीजी में हमारे पास सेमेस्टर 2 में 56 बच्चे इस समय मौजूद है क्लास में, और क्लास भी चल रहा है रेगुलर, और बच्चे आ रहे हैं, क्लास कर रहे हैं, और मतलब फुल सीट जाती है सर. एक भी सीट बचती नहीं है कभी भी हम लोग के पास. मतलब हमेशा कर देते हैं जी. और क्लास में बच्चे, हम लोग की कोशिश रहती है कि क्लास करने आए. तो मैंने सोचा आज बच्चों को ICPR के लेक्चर से भी जोड़ा जाए, कुछ नया सुने बच्चे. ठीक है, तो ये ऑनलाइन का कुछ फायदा हम लोग उठा रहे हैं कि बच्चे भी सीखे. तो मुझे बड़ी खुशी है कि आज मेरे 56 जो बच्चे आए हुए हैं क्लास में, उन सब ने आपका लेक्चर से उन्होंने लाभ प्राप्त किया. तो इसके लिए सर आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सभी का.
आपको भी धन्यवाद. डॉक्टर पूनम मैडम जी कुछ कहना चाह रही हैं. डॉक्टर जबे साहब।
देखिए
जी जी
एक बात मैं बता दूं, जो
लेक्चर के बाद डिस्कशन होना चाहिए,
जी जी
लेक्चर के बाद अध्यक्ष भाषण समापन होना चाहिए, एक ऑर्डर।
सर
अब अध्यक्ष भाषण के बाद जो है
आज
डिस्कशन शुरू कीजिए, तो
सर
वो माने एक डिग्निफाइड वे में
जी सर
जो हम लोग
आज
academic
आज
करते हैं।
आज आपका हम लोग एक तरीके से लेक्चर ही में अभी अभी
ये दो
अभी कहा भी कैसे मैं ही बोलूंगा।
करके उसके बाद में लोग कुछ बात करना चाहें तो कर सकते हैं, उसमें कोई बात नहीं। तो
हाँ, वो कर सकते हैं, लेकिन हो गया।
एक मिनट मैडम आज अध्यक्ष महोदय जी ने 2-3 दिन पहले कहा था कि हम भी बोलेंगे, तो इस नाते मैं दोनों जोड़ दिया था।
नहीं, बहुत अच्छा किया आपने, वो तो बहुत अच्छा किया।
अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा।
भाषण के बाद में डिस्कशन जो है वो
तो अभी सर वक्ता के रूप में थे, अब इस पर डिस्कशन होगा, उसके बाद 2 मिनट अध्यक्ष उद्बोधन देंगे। जी सर कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं?
मैं सिर्फ एक बात बताना चाहता हूँ। देखिए, जो आशा जी ने बताया और रमेश चंद्र सिन्हा ने बताया, ये बात किस तरह से प्लूरलिस्टिक वे ऑफ लाइफ इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। विवेकानंद स्वामी के समय में एला व्हीलर विलॉक करके बहुत बड़े अमेरिकन पोएट थे, उन्होंने कहा, आई बिलीव हिम टू बी द रीइंकारनेशन ऑफ सम ऑफ द ग्रेट स्पिरिट, परहैप्स बुद्ध एंड परहैप्स क्राइस्ट। तो बुद्ध और क्राइस्ट दोनों का जो सर्वश्रेष्ठ तत्व मैंने विवेकानंद जी में पाया, वो उस समय बोलने वाले जर्नलिस्ट थे। So he was really a holistic person who imbibed, the old and the new Vedanta and presented in the best possible way. So that kind of, way of life we have to find out and try to imbibe and try to teach. Thank you.
जी धन्यवाद सर। संजय जी कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं?
संजय
जी मैडम जी आप बोलिए।
एक चीज है, विनोबा भावे का हम लोगों ने महात्मा गांधी का के प्रति आदर व्यक्त किया, विवेकानंद के प्रति किया, और 9/11 जो है उसकी चर्चा की हम लोगों ने कि कैसे नेगेटिव
विनोबा जी छूट गए।
प्रोफेसर गीता मेहता ने बहुत अच्छे से बताया कि विनोबा भावे को भी, तो विनोबा भाव पर हम लोग अलग से कोई कार्यक्रम करेंगे।
हाँ, ये मैं भी सोच रही थी कि विनोबा भावे जी छूट गए हैं और इन पर फिर से किया जाए। आशा मैडम का बहुत ही सुंदर प्रेजेंटेशन था, बहुत सुंदर, और खास करके सभी रिलीजन्स के साथ जो आपने कंपैरिजन करके जो समअप किया वो बहुत सुंदर। आपके सारे पॉइंट्स बहुत सटीक थे और इसके लिए हम आपको बधाई देते हैं। और ICPR के आयोजकों को भी मैं बधाई देना चाहती हूँ कि उन्होंने इस विषय पर यह आयोजन किया। और पूर्ति जी, मैं भी जैन कॉलेज में रही हूँ, मैंने अपनी सर्विस वहाँ शुरू की थी, तो आज मुझे आपका भी ये अटेम्प्ट बहुत अच्छा लगा कि आपने विद्यार्थियों को वहाँ सुनाया। बहुत बढ़िया,
बधाई की बात में है। बधाई
जी मैम।
You have shown the interest, बच्चों के साथ आपने कनेक्ट किया।
सत्येंद्र जी कुछ प्रश्न करना चाह रहे थे, पूछना चाह रहे थे। डॉक्टर सत्येंद्र जी, डॉक्टर साजी वर्गीस जी, उन्होंने भी मैसेज डाला।
I'm here. This is Saji. This is Saji.
Okay, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not able to switch on my camera because I live in a remote area. I'm in northeastern part of our country.
Yes, I know.
I heard the wonderful presentation made by Madam Asha Mukherjee. As always, it is very illuminating and very interesting to listen to a contemporary thinker in the form of Madam Asha Mukherjee. Madam Asha, I'm very happy to hear that very many doctrines of different religions practiced in India have been referred to. These anthropocentric concerns that we always thought that Christianity had, even in its gospel, what is called as New Testament. But this concern had been addressed very well in time by the European thinkers. Think of Leibniz, Spinoza. Even in 16th and 17th century, even Henry Bergson in its creative expositions, they have taken care of that anthropocentric concern in time. Well, you may see a contrary in its movement of colonialism later, for which I don't think we can blame it upon Christianity for having done that, because the humanity has gone through such move, and colonialism is one of that phase of life in the world. We cannot say that it was not a move. The entire world was under colonization of the British, and they happened to be Christians. So it is not the Christianity which could be blamed for such materialistic attitude of Britishers or Europe at large. Now, thank you very much for making a mention and also thorough exposition of Tagore and Vivekananda's exposition of Veda and also of nationalism, which very rightly you have pointed out, and I am also proud of being in this region where Tagore had emphasized upon nationalism on and around the humanistic principles. Now, look at contemporary India. This is on erosion now. We don't have such humanistic concerns, at least built around Indian nationalism. Unfortunately, it is built around religious principles. Not even principles. It is just the name of some emperors, some kings, which even, by force tried to penetrate into some cultures which is foreign to it, which is aligned to such cultures. Now, why, madam, such erosion? It is not an ideal kind of a phase that we go through, where enlightened professors like you and Professor R.C. Sinha who live, why such erosion of Indian nationalism, which was once the most purified? I hope to listen some enlightened comments on this and also suggestion how we can overcome this rather than using nationalism for political gains with such vendetta that is being used now for. Have some suggestions, practical suggestions from philosophers so that this would come to an end and humanism would come back again as the agenda of India as a whole. Thank you very much.
Can I reply?
Yes.
जी मैडम. Yes, madam.
Sinha sahab.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Saji, for bringing up a very important issue. And I guess you're right that, to a certain extent, the colonialism which actually dominated in the Eurocentric cultures was responsible for the kind of exploitation of Christianity, I would say, in some sense or the other. Christianity itself has a lot of good things which actually Tagore himself appreciated. And actually Vivekananda himself have used this notion, the service to humanity. Actually, to be very frank, this whole notion comes from Christianity, So there are a lot of good things which actually, are appreciated by these great thinkers like Tagore, Gandhi, Vivekananda, and so many others, most of the reformists of the Indian origin, they have actually taken a lot of things from Christianity. So Christianity at large is not criticized here, as you can see. And actually, I was referring only to Vivekananda's way of looking at it. And I was actually confining myself to Vivekananda's address. So actually, he's not criticizing. He's actually showing that, Indians are criticized for idol worship. and also, sacrifices, etc. So he was actually showing that, like this kind of things are there in Christianity as well, like witch hunting, for example. So he is talking about all that, so the practices are good and bad, they are present in every religion. So that's exactly what he's trying to point out. Point number one. The second thing is regarding the question, which actually is very important, you have raised. That, and I will also pointed out in my lecture that, look, the hope of humanity, hope in unity or in humanity, which was the basic hope with which Vivekananda actually ended his address, the Chicago address. And, and also that was the foundation on which, people were working in the Parliament of Religions. And how is it and why is it that, in spite of having so many Parliament of Religions, although we did not have many, in fact, there's one in October, the coming October, Parliament of Religion is going to be there. And fortunately, I'm going to be part of one of the panels. But then, the purpose for holding this Parliament of Religions, that it's not really that, has not really given those results, and hope still remains the hope, as I've said in my lecture, Now, in fact, we are having different kinds of problems, as you can see. I think somebody had said, perhaps Sinaji have said that, we don't have that kind of problem. No, I think the member secretary, Satchidanandji, said that in today's world, we do not have those kind of problems which we used to face earlier. But I would say that only the form has changed. Maybe we have grave problems now, We have more problems today. We did not have, at least for example, people, we don't have people like Hitler, who are having the genocide, the Holocaust. But we have, look at what is going on in Afghanistan on the name of nation. Look at what is going on in the name of Muslim Islamic fundamentalism, the terrorism, which we are facing, and many other forms because of the modernity and technology, which we all know. And the United Nations often fails, we talk about equality, democracy, justice, and they are all meaningless, because in the United Nations, no nations are actually equal, except one or two, who try to get the vote of others, and, they manipulate the whole thing. So the democracy has failed us. The nationalism has failed us. And the humanity is also failed. Let me say this very clearly. Now, the question is that why is this erosion? See, I can't really, it's a very big question. I can't really answer this and actually, I don't have an easy answer. These are all complicated issues, But I would say that at least in a country like India, because actually you were referring to Indian form of nationalism and the recent developments in the country. So therefore, I would say that in the nation like India, I would say that perhaps the education is the only way by which we can overcome the erosion. Again, I'm hoping. And actually one lives with hope. So this education, I will give you the example of education, which actually we have in Shantiniketan. In spite of all the limitations, whatever limitations we have in Shantiniketan, we get people, even today, from all over the world. People come and, join. We have all the traditions, people coming from different traditions, they come. Even if they don't join, as a part of the institution, as a student or as a teacher, but they come and visit this place, and they want to see how the things are taught. And let me put it on record. Actually, I'm involved in this academic study of religion in India and Asia at large for last 2 to 3 decades. And I have been writing about this, that how, because after all, religion is an extremely important aspect of life of India. It is not so much important because, the world is divided into 2 parts. State with religion, state without religion. Let me put it straight away. The world is divided into 2 parts, state with religion, state without religion. And the world where the state has accepted the religion either it is Islam or it is Buddhism or any other religion. Even in that country, people are not very happy because of the pluralistic approach. People are, the borders have broken. People, because of the modern technology, etc., people are traveling from here and there, and they want to settle. They want to, for economic reasons, for cultural reasons, for various reasons, people are traveling and people are trying to settle down. So the religion actually is extremely important. So there's a return of religion. And for last, say, 100 years, we were, because of the scientific revolution, we were thinking that the religion would be set aside, and Europe tried, America tried, but they all failed. Now there's a return to religion. In last, say, 30-40 years, people are in different forms. They want to get back to religion. And that is why actually a lot of things are selling in Western world, and India is really doing very well. Let me put it, because India is actually the foundation of religions. And actually we have so many different, I mean, just to mention one experience of mine, when I was in Norway, this was in 2010, there was a conference which was organized in Norway University, in Oslo University in Norway. And this was the traditions of the meditation, tradition of meditations in the world. And you'll be surprised, there were 86 different traditions of meditation in the world. And they were all represented there. So what I'm saying is that, people really want to know. So it's not simply the religion. There are various forms like, mindfulness, I mean, look at the terms, yoga, why it has become so popular. People are fed up with this materialism. They're looking for some different kind of, respite. And I guess this is one of the reasons. And to come back to the point on education, I was saying. So Tagore started this, learning or studying the religion of everybody, of all the traditions. So we actually, our department is one of the oldest departments of the university. The whole university started with this department, where the religion was studied. The text of Vedas and Sanskrit and in Pali and Prakrit and all the other traditions, Indo-Tibetan, Chinese, Japanese, all these languages were studied by the people coming from their own traditions. And the people from India were actually, they were participating, they were dialogues, they were working together. So if you look at the publications of Vishwavarth, you'll find all these results, how these things have developed. And I think the best way to learn other or to know other is by knowing their tradition. Because every tradition has its importance in the living aspect. A living aspect is very important. Now, how I live, I mean, Hinduism, of course, it says wonderful things, but how I live in my life as a Hindu, that's equally important. Now, if I'm sort of practicing untouchability, I'm practicing, the discrimination between class, gender, and caste. How can we give the dignity to the human being, about which Vedas have talked about? Now, that's what Professor Sinha was talking about. And therefore, we need to know what the other person is, how the person is, what is he? And to know the other person, I have to know his traditions. I have to understand. Maybe I will not be able to understand exactly the way who is living that tradition. The outsider view and insider view. That difference perhaps will always remain. But yet, I will have more way of communicating, a better way of understanding, a better way of living. At least if I know that the next door neighbor is a Muslim, and if I'm sort of talking to him and I'm sort of intermingling with his, just yesterday, in fact, I hope that people don't take it otherwise. Just I was listening, somebody sent me this WhatsApp message where our previous president of India, Abdul Kalam, was reciting, Ganesh Chaturthi message, and what a chaste Sanskrit he was reciting. I couldn't believe, So this is tradition, India. India has grown with, But why are we talking about this? All sorts of problems in Hindus, Muslims are coming up. Now, if I say that it is because of the erosion, this erosion is because we don't even know the other tradition, I would say yes. Because if I had known the tradition of Islam, and if the Muslims have known the traditions of Hindu, perhaps they would not have done that. At least they will hesitate. Even if somebody tells me to go and kill the other person, I would not go and kill. So I guess the education is perhaps the foundation, and the academic study. See, we have been studying Vedas, we have been studying Qurans, but Islamic studies, Buddhist studies, Hindu studies, Vedic studies, Sanskrit studies, all these things we have been studying. But where is a platform where we can study all together at the same time? Is there any platform in India? Very few. Surprisingly, even after independence of the country, after independence of more than 75 years, even today we have 6 to 7 or 8 or maybe 10 departments of the country where the comparative religion is taught as a discipline. So the academic study of religion is absolutely a must in India, because unless we know the other traditions, we will not be able to understand the person with whom I'm living, with whom I'm spending most of my time. And we talk about syncretization. Sure, India is the land of syncretization. India is the land of tolerance. India is, no doubt. But in the recent times, we can also see, and this is not recent, actually, even earlier we have seen, Muslims, they came and they practice all atrocities on Hindus. Hindus, the moment they think, for example, Babri Masjid and so many other things, there can be innumerable examples. But let's think them in a perspective, in a neutral way. I'm a Hindu, definitely I will have a soft corner for Hinduism. A Muslim will definitely have a soft corner for Islam. But at the same time, if I know that, this is the kind of person who's practicing this, perhaps we'll be in a better situation to react immediately. That's the only hope I can think of. So I think academic study of religion, that should be introduced. And I request Professor Sinha Sahab to take up this with at a different level. And if the study of religion becomes an essential part of our philosophy. I'm not saying that philosophy and religion are different. Again, let me put it this way very clearly. Because in most of the Indic tradition, philosophy and religion, they are not different. They are actually part of the two sides of the same coin. Therefore, they should be studied. Philosophy, of course, we have been studying, but we should also study religious traditions, the traditions which are coming from different traditions. For example, Islamic tradition, we don't study at all. Most of the Indian universities don't have anything like on Islamic philosophy. Let me put it straight away. Why? We have also been closing the doors. Islamic studies is only studied in either Aligarh Muslim University or in I don't know what.
Delhi.
Yeah, Delhi, Jama Millia, and perhaps somewhere else. So I guess something have to be introduced so that people should know a little better. That's the only hope I'm saying. Thank you.
जी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैडम जी। अब मैं अध्यक्ष महोदय से निवेदन करूंगा कि 2 मिनट के लिए अब अध्यक्ष उद्बोधन का
because you have to conduct every day, तो एक सिस्टम से चलना चाहिए। ठीक है, कभी कभी इस सिस्टम के बाहर भी आना अच्छा लगता है। ये बात जरूर है कि बहुत सारी चीजें उभर कर आई, जैसे अभी प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी ने कहा कि एकेडमिक अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ डिफरेंट रिलीजन्स, ये बात सही है। जैसे बहुत सारे हिंदू धर्मावलंबी कुरान शरीफ नहीं पढ़ते हैं, कुछ लोग पढ़ते हैं, नहीं पढ़ते हैं, उसी तरह से दूसरे धर्म के लोग भी अभी लास्ट में हमने कहा कि रेस्पेक्ट टू अदर्स, वो एक सिग्निफिकेंट अंडरस्टैंडिंग हमारी बनती है कि दूसरे धर्मों के लोगों को समझना और दूसरे धर्म के ग्रंथों को समझना, क्योंकि आप ग्रंथ समझेंगे तब आप समझ पाएंगे कि उनकी आइडियोलॉजी क्या है। और शायद व्यवहार और सिद्धांत में जो गैप है वो खत्म होगा। आखिर हम लोग का व्यवहार, जब सभी धर्मों का सिद्धांत इतना पवित्र है, पवित्रता सभी धर्मों में है, वो इस्लाम हो, क्रिश्चियनिटी हो, हिंदुइज्म हो, सिखिज्म हो, जोरास्ट्रियनिज्म हो, तो सभी धर्मों में पवित्रता एक ऐसा कॉन्सेप्ट है और एक ऐसा एलिमेंट, तत्व है जो सभी धर्मों में है। लेकिन आचरण हमारा तो बदल जाता है, तो इसलिए ये अच्छा सजेशन है। और आपको बताएं कि हिंदुस्तान में बहुत सारे यूनिवर्सिटीज में कंपैरेटिव रिलीजन की पढ़ाई होती है। जैसे शांति निकेतन में तो पूरा डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ रिलीजन एंड फिलॉसफी है, बीएचयू है, उसके बाद
संपूर्णानंद में भी है सर,
संपूर्णानंद में है,
पटियाला है, रायपुर है,
पटियाला में है, और कोर्सेज जो है जैसे
जामा मिलिया है,
जामिया है, कोर्सेज पटना यूनिवर्सिटी में हम लोगों ने कंपैरेटिव रिलीजन का इंट्रोड्यूस किया है। ऐसे बहुत जगह कंपैरेटिव रिलीजन के कोर्सेज हम लोग इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं, और अभी इसकी ज़रूरत है कि सभी धर्मों के आदि ग्रंथ को हम लोग पढ़ें। ये निश्चित ही ICPR के लिए भी एक जिम्मेदारी बनती है, और इस तरह के आयोजन करने का लक्ष्य भी है कि हम विभिन्न धर्मों को समझें, और विशेषकर ये जो डिफरेंसेस हैं, थियोरेटिकल और प्रैक्टिकल डिफरेंसेस हैं, वो तभी कुछ कम हो सकता है जब हम एक दूसरे को समझें, ग्रंथ के माध्यम से समझें, व्यवहार के माध्यम से समझें। भारतवर्ष में फिर भी समझदारी बहुत बहुत अच्छी है, वी लिव टुगेदर। और भारतवर्ष एक ऐसा देश है जहाँ की क्रिश्चियंस, मोहम्मडन्स, सिख्स, सभी धर्मों के लोग दे लिव इन हार्मोनी, ओवरऑल हार्मोनी। ठीक है, कहीं कहीं कुछ किसी जगह कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स होते हैं, इसको डिनाई नहीं किया जा सकता, लेकिन बाई एंड लार्ज इंडिया इज वेरी secular, not by virtue of the constitution, but by virtue of its own tradition. भारतवर्ष का एक ये ऐसा मानते हैं लोग कि संविधान में लिखा हुआ है कि हम पंथ निरपेक्ष रहेंगे, तो उसके कारण हम सेकुलर हैं। Not like that, I do not believe. India by tradition is a secular one, having commitment to their own religion. और यहाँ गांधी, महात्मा गांधी और विनोबा समीचीन लगते हैं जब कहते हैं कि धर्म समभाव, सेकुलरिज्म का मतलब धर्म निरपेक्षता नहीं हम लेते हैं, धर्म समभाव को लेते हैं। हम समझते हैं कि ये बहुत ही व्यवहारिक हम लोग को सजेशंस आए हैं, और अच्छा अभिभाषण तो हुआ ही, लेकिन जो सजेशंस आए हैं ICPR के लिए भी, वो भी बहुत सराहनीय है। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं पुनः आवासीय पटल पर जो लोग हैं, जैसे हमारे मित्र दवे साहब, वेरी रेगुलर। आई अप्रिशिएट हिज पंक्चुअलिटी एंड रेगुलरिटी। एकदम बिल्कुल घड़ी की नोक से ये जुड़ते हैं, और जब तक ये चलता है सेशन तब तक रहते हैं। और भी हमारे मित्र हैं, सत्येंद्र जी हैं और संजय जी हैं, और बहुत सारे लोग चले गए, गीता मेहता, पूनम सिंह, और भी जो भी जुड़े हैं। हमें ये नाम याद नहीं है, लेकिन सबको मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा। ओवर टू जयशंकर जी। और हाँ, हमारे जो डायरेक्टर और मेंबर सेक्रेटरी है उनको भी धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा, क्योंकि बिना उनके कोऑपरेशन का तो एकेडमिक वर्क हो नहीं सकता। तो सबको धन्यवाद। जयशंकर जी।
जी प्रणाम सर जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। आज के इस कार्यक्रम के हमारे मुख्य जो वक्ता व्याख्यान जिनका था प्रोफेसर आशा मुखर्जी जी, आपको बहुत बहुत मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं कि भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद के ये ऑनलाइन कार्यक्रम में आपने अपने विचार हम लोगों के स्वामी विवेकानंद के द्वारा जो विश्व धर्म सम्मेलन शिकागो में दिए गए थे उस पर एक जो विमर्श हुआ वो बड़ा अच्छा लगा, इसलिए आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। इस कार्यक्रम में जुड़े प्रोफेसर सबाजित मिश्र जी, प्रोफेसर विजय कुमार जैन जी, प्रोफेसर पूनम सिंह जी, प्रोफेसर अरविंद विक्रम सिंह जी, प्रोफेसर लक्ष्मीकांत पाधी जी, प्रोफेसर साजी वर्गीस जी, सत्येंद्र कुमार जी, प्रोफेसर सिद्धांत शेखर, पुरेंद्र शेखर जी, और प्रोफेसर अनिल तिवारी जी और आलोक टंडन जी, ये सभी लोगों को मैं भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद की तरफ से धन्यवाद दे रहा हूँ। डॉक्टर पूर्ति मेहर जी जो अपने 60-65 या 56 बच्चों के साथ आज इस कार्यक्रम में शामिल हुई, उनको मैं विशेष रूप से धन्यवाद दे रहा हूँ। उन बच्चों को भी, जो विद्यार्थी लोगों को भी मैं धन्यवाद देता हूँ जो ICPR के आभासी पटल में वो सभी लोगों ने एक बड़े मंच पे आकर के ये इस कार्यक्रम को देखा, और मैं आशा करता हूँ कि वो बच्चे आगामी भी इस कार्यक्रम को जब भी हमारा प्रोग्राम होगा देखेंगे, उनको भी मैं धन्यवाद दे रहा हूँ। इस कार्यक्रम में डॉक्टर देवलिया, डॉक्टर संदीप चौरसिया, डॉक्टर आनंद कुमार गुप्ता, डॉक्टर पत्रिका जी, डॉक्टर रेखा यादव, घनश्याम पाल, कल्पना सिंह, अर्पिता भट्टाचार्य, शशिकला यादव, शालिग्राम जी, संजय तिवारी जी, नासिर जी और मुकेश चौरसिया जी, और उसके बाद इस पटल पर जो जैसे धनंजय जी दिखाई दे रहे हैं, आप सभी लोगों को भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद की तरफ से मैं एक बार धन्यवाद देता हूँ। और कार्यक्रम को अगर चेयरमैन सर की अनुमति होगी तो मैं इसको फिर बंद करूंगा, या अभी 1-2 मिनट आपस में बातचीत करना हो तो फिर हम लोग कर सकते हैं।
प्रणाम मैडम।
जयशंकर प्रसाद जी, आपको और पूरे ICPR परिवार को मेरी तरफ से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, और सबको प्रणाम मेरा। और इस बहाने जो है नवीन साहब से और बाकी सबसे मुलाकात हुई, ये भी बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है। सबको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। रमेश जी, सिन्हा साहब को स्पेशली धन्यवाद, सच्चिदानंद मिश्रा जी को, पूरे ICPR परिवार को और पूरे दर्शन परिवार को जो हम लोगों से सबसे जुड़ पाए। थैंक यू
जी। अंत में मैं अब इस कार्यक्रम के हमारे अध्यक्ष भारतीय दार्शनिक अनुसंधान परिषद अध्यक्ष जी प्रोफेसर सिन्हा सर को मैं धन्यवाद दे रहा हूँ। इस कार्यक्रम के हमारे जो सदस्य सचिव प्रोफेसर सच्चिदानंद मिश्र जी, उनको भी मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद दे रहा हूँ। डॉक्टर पूजा व्यास जी को भी, जो एकेडमिक सेंटर की हमारी निदेशिका है और वहाँ शोध योजना की भी निदेशिका है, उनको भी मैं धन्यवाद देता हूँ। और इस कार्यक्रम को YouTube पर लाइव कर रही स्पाइकेज कंपनी पूनम पंचाल जी को भी मैं धन्यवाद देता हूँ, क्योंकि हमारा ये कार्यक्रम YouTube के माध्यम से सजीव प्रसारण भी चल रहा है। तो इसलिए अब अगर हमारे अध्यक्ष महोदय की अनुमति हो तो इस कार्यक्रम को हम बंद करें। अंत में एक बार सभी लोगों को मैं प्रणाम कर रहा हूँ।
अरे जयशंकर जी सर, प्रणाम, आपको भी धन्यवाद।
जी जी देवलिया जी जी
नमस्ते आशा जी, नमस्ते।
ठीक है सर, अच्छा प्रणाम सर, फिर मिलेंगे।
प्रणाम सर, प्रणाम
प्रणाम प्रणाम।